Hello everyone, and welcome to the International Association for K-12 Online Learning, iNACOL special edition webinar today. We have a presentation on a new grant opportunity that we're pleased to be partners with, the Next Generation Learning Challenges grants, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and led in this effort by our colleagues at EDUCAUSE. I want to thank Sarah Lux and Andy Calkins for being here to do a presentation, especially for our membership and broader community of innovators in K-12 education. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah and Andy. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Susan. This voice belongs to Andy Calkins. I'm the Deputy Director at NGLC, and I'll be mostly handing the microphone over to Sarah Lukes, who is our K-12 Program Manager, Program Officer. I'm going to take you through just 2 or 3 minutes of NGLC background first, and then we'll do about 20 to 25 minutes probably of presenting, but then hopefully leave a fair amount of time for questions and answers. You can post your questions over there in the chat space or just hold on to them for that moment, and periodically Sarah may also ask you for some questions as we go. So from the 30,000 foot level, this question, what is NGLC? This was an idea that was born out of the Gates Foundation about 3 years ago, 3.5 years, to accelerate educational innovation across both secondary and post-secondary lines. Through the leveraged use of technology. And Gates wanted very much for the initiative to be grounded in the field with membership organizations that were very much in touch on a daily basis with the real lives of schools and post-secondary institutions. And so they asked EDUCAUSE to be the managing partner. And then these 3 other organizations you see listed here to be our founding organizational partners. iNACOL is one. We're really grateful to Susan and her entire staff for all of their partnership over these 3 years. CCSSO is our other K-12 partner, and the League for Innovation in the Community College is the principal higher ed partner. We have done a fair amount of grant making in a fairly short amount of time. About $37 million has been distributed to 78 grantees. Across 3 different waves. The first one focused on post-secondary projects. That's the one you see listed on the right there with 29 grantees. The second one was focused on secondary education projects, really Common Core linked middle school projects. Both of those were what we call building block style component sort of innovations that we were funding. And then last year we did Wave 3A and Wave 3B, both of which were aimed at creating and catalyzing whole new school models and degree programs at the post-secondary level that met a certain fairly ambitious set of criteria for effective, personalized, blended, technology-enabled learning. And that led us to form with the Gates Foundation, again, Wave 4, which is a build on Wave 3A. Wave 3A produced 20 new models, some that opened last fall and another 11 that will open this coming fall. And Wave 4 is it's not a duplicate of Wave 3, and there are some fundamental differences between it, as you'll hear from Sarah. But you all, iNACOL's membership, really are in some ways the audience that we developed this RFP for. We're looking to bring it to people who have been in the space and have had a number of firm ideas about what technology could do in order to lead to a much more effective, personalized, and ultimately successful education for kids. And so we've geared up 2 different cycles of deadlines for this year that we hope you're going to take a good hard look at, and we hope to respond with a really compelling application to either a planning grant or a launch grant. At this point, I think, Sarah, I'll hand it over to you, and you can take people through some of the details that they're really hoping for, and then we'll take questions afterwards. Thanks.
Hey, Lori. Good. How are you?
Great. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah.
So Andy indicated that there are 2 cycles, and the $12 million then is spread over 2 cycles and 2 types of grants, a launch grant and a planning grant. If you're going for a launch grant, then you're intending to actually open doors on a new school, a breakthrough school. So you're eligible for $450,000. $150,000 of that is guaranteed up front, and then you get up to $300,000 in one-to-one matching funds from your open time. You have a couple of years actually to fulfill your full matching obligation. If you're applying for a planning grant, you're not ready to open a school yet, but you have a fantastic idea. You're an individual or an organization, and this is money that you would use to advance your idea. So you're looking at $100,000 in that case. And the 2 cycles, the relevant deadlines you're seeing here are April 22nd. That's the one that's fast approaching. But if you don't believe that you're going to be ready by then, you could come back at either of these pots of dollars December 2nd, still yet this year, 2013. So this is in a snapshot because folks like to know how much is available and how quickly they would have to get their application together. So we're going to revisit this and dig a little deeper. This grant obviously is available to focus on whole school models. So the breakthrough school design is actually focusing in grades 6 through 12. And we're focusing on schools in order to get to the student experience. And as Andy indicated earlier, part of our role along with our partners is to kind of trumpet what these models can look like and what's being learned in these models nationwide. So in order to really get different results, we have to do some things differently. And the kinds of results that we're talking about, you're seeing here. So 1.5 years of growth, deeper learning outcomes, 80% of students matriculating to post-secondary and/work environments, 90% cohort graduation, and fundamentally school models that are both financially sustainable and scalable. In a breakthrough school, none of this will be different or shocking to those of you who have been longtime members of the iNACOL membership network. We're talking about student-centered and student-owned learning, where students really demonstrate what they know in order to earn credit and to move forward, and it's flexible how they can do that. Their instruction, both on an individual level and on a group level, typically happens in a blended environment. And fundamentally those schools, as we mentioned earlier, are sustainable on public dollars within the grant period and also scalable. And we can talk more about what scalable means to us. It doesn't necessarily commit you to opening a second school. It can be how you expose others to the good ideas and motivate them and enable them to open models that look like yours or inspired by yours. So in order to apply for these funds, there are 3 broad categories. You're either probably a school district, a charter network of some kind, or a breakthrough school developer partnership. So I call this third category partner category. But essentially in these 3 categories, which are slightly different than the earlier wave, you're seeing our interest in engaging people earlier on in the process, which is the planning focus in addition to the launch focus, and a broader array of folks being invited in. So certainly traditional school districts, but also state agencies. And in the partnership category, that could also include nonprofit organizations, private entities, a whole host of entities that haven't typically been eligible for our funds. So let's dive into the first one. In the school district category, you would be either interested in opening a brand new school within the district, or you'd be interested in doing a complete redesign of a school, which means you're actually performing well by state indicators and you have significant capacity. What you're interested in is being able to rethink your whole school design despite that, because you feel that your students in the future, in order to be successful, would benefit from increased aspects of, say, competency-based learning and blended learning and the student-centered approach. And so you believe that those benefits are such that you would be willing to completely rethink your academic approach, your organizational approach, your management, your financial aspects. And then the third category here, the Restart School. If you are SIG eligible, so there's lots of areas of improvement and transformation into the SIG work, but if you have the Restart designation, then you could take a chronically failing school and essentially propose under the Restart designation to design a breakthrough school and apply for funds in that regard. In the second category, you're more than likely a charter network, and so you might be an entrepreneur who's committing to creating a whole new network, and so you would use these funds to launch the first school, but what you're really envisioning is many schools beyond that. So you're interested in starting a whole new network, and you would describe to us what you believe that network is about and why it's different. And then if you're not going to do that, you might be an existing charter management organization and wanting to open a new school within that range. If this is the category that interests you, you would need to articulate how the new breakthrough design is actually different than your current existing models. In other words, these funds aren't intended for expansion. They're actually intended to launch a diverse portfolio, a brand new portfolio of schools. And so you'd need to make that distinguishing factor in your application. And then the third category here, complete redesign school within the existing CMO. Very similar in terms of wanting to take a school and completely rethink it, and then having to address the academic, organizational, and financial aspects within this grant application. And then the third category, the school developer partnership. Here's where you're seeing post-secondary institutions, for-profit and nonprofit entities, various service providers, maybe somebody who runs a platform, a state agency, just a whole host of significant partners, third-party entities that we know are in the education space. They're supporting schools and districts already. Maybe they're growing their own services and portfolio of services and products. And they want to put together a partnership, or they're already engaged in a particular kind of partnership that would support a new breakthrough school design. So in that case, you just simply need to demonstrate your memorandum of understanding and then put forward your application in this third category. So just to review, these are all the entities that essentially would be eligible if they can demonstrate their vision for a new breakthrough design, either in a planning grant or in a launch grant. And the thing that's distinguishing that for the immediate deadline is, are you ready to open a school fall of 2013? If you're not, you're probably at this point talking about a planning grant. If you are, then you might well be talking about a launch grant. A couple other requirements of these funds. You must serve 3 grade levels, and those 3 grade levels would need to be attended to within the grant period. So we're focusing on 612 or the non-age-based equivalent of those grades, but you can open your school with 1 grade level at a time. So start with 6th grade, 6, 7, 8, start with 9th grade, 9, 10, 11, 12, and build it 1 year at a time. You must, when your doors are open, the students that you serve, 40% of them must be eligible for free and reduced price lunch. And then you must not be charging tuition or accepting funds in such a way that your program design would not be considered scalable using public dollars. So here are those deadlines again. I do want to point out, if you applied for a planning grant April 22nd and you were awarded that grant, you could come back this December and apply for launch. So you could be planning between now and into December, obviously. Come back in December and apply. You would be eligible to do that. If you were awarded in December and you intended to open your school the fall of 2014, you essentially could tap $550,000 of these grant funds. So you have a good idea, and maybe you're even already well underway to open a school this fall. What next steps do you take if you haven't already looked into this? We have all of the information on our website, and you'll see them on the right-hand side of the bar there. The FAQs, RFP, everything is in a downloadable form, very easy to access. And every week, every couple of days actually throughout the week, we're running on our blog featured targeted themes that are meant to help you be successful in putting forth an application. So a couple of those have already run in terms of practical steps you can take, resources that are available, a video archive that you can watch where, for instance, the previous wave, Wave 3A, what did those PowerPoint presentations to the review committee look like? What kinds of things have been proposed? Those are very helpful in terms of you understanding what a successful presentation of those ideas looks like. It's not intended to be replicated. It's simply intended for inspiration. You certainly should leverage your own good ideas here. Excuse me. There's also the same video library resource on the blendmylearning.com blog available for you. And then there's a host of, you'll see, financial links and resources, because part of our commitment is to pushing out information about what these new models can look like financially, what they can look like from a different staffing configuration, what kinds of platforms and curricular resources have been used in the past or are promising. There's also a written document that for each of the already funded Wave 3A grantees has a profile, and in this blue space where it says at a glance, you'll see, for instance, are they using Apex as a platform, or are they using portions of Khan Academy, or what are they doing in a competency-based way to look at certain kinds of metrics. So that's just a host of detailed, helpful information in those profiles, which has already been made available to you for easy access. In the blog series that I already mentioned, and also in the videos, we've begun to feature aspects of some of these new designs. And so USC Hybrid High is an example of one, where they have both already enabled some of the personalized methods that students can move at their own pace and demonstrate competency. And then even if they're still a newer model and they're not kind of fully formed yet, there's information about how they're addressing both their strengths and their weaknesses developmentally. And these same folks are blogging on blendmylearning.com about their experiences. So you can see their ideas taking shape in real time, both good, bad, and ugly, which most folks find very helpful. Then what happens if you're actually awarded? The first thing that happens is you come into a cohort of like-minded professionals and innovators. And many of you, from your own experience in the iNACOL network, are aware of the benefits of simply being able to meet up with people who are thinking about things the way you are, or addressing specific kinds of problems, and you find support for those problems within that group. We, the NGLC and the partners, do provide targeted assistance to you in terms of strategies around, I already mentioned, staffing models, financial models, those kinds of things. You will connect with each of those organizations, and their latest research and support can be made available to you and is made available to you throughout the duration of the grant period. And then, of course, you are in a position to leverage a whole lot more money, which is by design. So not only do you have the matching opportunity, but because you get written up in profiles and things, you're attracting attention and potential additional investment. In terms of how you connect with other grantees, some of the things that we do to enable you to do that well is that we, in addition to pulling out these threads of kind of what we're learning and various problems that we're working on collectively, we also convene you face-to-face And we do that at the iNACOL conference. At least we did last year, and I believe that we plan to do so again this year. We convene you in professional learning communities, both virtually and face-to-face. We engage you through a Yammer community. Again, another way to discuss both topically, high level, and also in depth. And then we do quite a bit of webinar, video, blog, and product and tool sharing. Then the eGrant application. This is what it looks like when you log in and you create a profile, and then you get prompted for each of the aspects that the request for proposal indicates that you'll be asked to respond on. And you can get in here and start your submission and save it and edit it and make changes and upload something different, come back to it later. So just want you to know that this is a very flexible application. You don't have to have it all figured out by the time you go to apply. You can do it in bits and pieces throughout. So that's the material that we've prepared for you today, and I know that some of you are in different aspects of the process. You're either learning about it for the first time, or possibly you're well on your way, and we've even talked by phone already, so you have a host of questions. I'm going to stop and see what questions you have, and then I can add some additional things.
So, Sarah, while we wait for some of the participants to type in their questions in the chat window, let's you and I just cover a couple of the questions that we've been hearing a lot from people who've been contacting us about Wave 4. One of them, which I suspect might be of particular interest to iNACOL members, just has to do with the whole question of why Wave 3A and Wave 4 have been pitched at the level of school design and school development, rather than something that perhaps gets its sights bigger on something more systemically related. That's a lot of what iNACOL does, for instance. And the answer is that we completely believe in and support the notion that change has to happen at all levels, including system level and district level and across the whole enterprise. But as you read through the RFP and the other materials on this wave on our site, you'll see that the level of transformation that we're talking about here is so fundamental that we're struck, and the Gates Foundation is struck, by the relative paucity of models nationally, where you can walk in and just really see what it looks like. And so Wave 3A and Wave 4 really are designed to enrich that national landscape and put some well-timed funds and networking supports into the hands of people who are really pressing the model, the traditional learning model of middle and high school. And our goal is, as we keep saying throughout, is not just to serve the few hundred kids that each one of these schools is going to serve in the first instance. That's why we build into the RFP so much attention to the financial sustainability of these schools and their scalability, and encourage every applicant to figure out the right ways to weave into their DNA for their school design some really good thinking about how this model can do more than simply serve those few hundred kids, which is a wonderful thing, but serve as a model or as an accelerator through a network, or use policy channels that will help trip similar kinds of strategies in other schools. Whatever means makes sense to you as the way to take your ideas to scale, that's what we want to hear about. So, Sarah, do you want to pick off a question that you've been hearing lately and offer up an answer to that question?
I do, actually. So if you haven't had a look at the eGrant application yet, the requirements for the planning grant are kind of a 5-page narrative of your vision, what you'd like to do and why it's important along these 7 dimensions of a breakthrough school. But I've been getting a lot of questions lately about, are there restrictions on what I can use the funds for? And there aren't necessarily, at least in the traditional ways that folks think about this. It could be used for consulting fees and travel fees and office space and funds to convene people because you need to build certain kinds of buy-in or partnerships. In some cases, folks might need to buy out time or engage different professional development kinds of opportunities. So there's a wide range of allowable use here. And I think it is a new kind of grant for us. But also in terms of how people are thinking about what they'd like to do with those funds and what they might need to do to put themselves in a position to be able to then think about launching the school that they spend some time planning and further designing. Andy, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that was great, and you were right to point to it because it's one of the fundamental differences between Wave 3A and Wave 4. And it's designed to be a way for us to reach people who are, at a different stage in their planning cycle. One other thing we might comment on here is probably the other fundamental difference, which is that we've created, as you heard from Sarah earlier, several different categories in which you would be eligible to participate. One of them is creating a brand new school, whether you're a district or a charter network or whatever, some authorizing school management entity. But there are 2 others also. The restart category, if you're so designated under the Federal School Improvement Grant Program, and the complete redesign category. And we chose those 2 for deliberate reasons. In the restart category offers the greatest depth of operating latitude and requires the assistance of a turnaround or school management partner with really deep expertise. And both of those elements we feel are absolutely required to kickstart a kind of school transformation of the nature that we're talking about here. The other category, complete redesign, is aimed at districts and charter networks that have a school that's operating at pretty good performance levels. It's meeting average state performance levels academically, even while having at least a 40% poverty student enrollment. And our idea there is sort of the same. We're saying, okay, you guys are clearly showing that you've got a fair amount of capacity in that school. It's already delivering pretty good results on the traditional model. But if you are a district or a charter network that has a vision for something fundamentally different from that and are looking for a leg up to help get there and a cohort of fellow-minded peers to help make the journey more fruitful for you, then this would be a place to turn to. There is a valley in between them, which we've had to talk to a number of people about. Schools that are not demonstrating sufficiently high capacity at this moment, but have also not yet fallen into the restart category for turnaround. And our thought is that on both of those dynamics, those schools are not likely to be in the best position to be successful at a transformation like this, either in terms of the capacity that's already there or in terms of the fresh new operating latitude that having a SIG restart designation would give them. I hope that's sort of clear for people, and if it's not, there's more material on that in the RFP, and we're happy to answer questions and help guide you through the process. That's one of the things we had the luxury of being able to do as as a private charitable effort funded by Gates. NGLC is in business to try to help everyone produce the best possible application you can. So if you've got questions and you think some advice from us could help, by all means, contact Sarah. You see her email right there on the slide, and she'll be glad to answer as best she can.
So are there other things that those of you listening in, exploring this option, you've been wondering either before you came to the webinar today, or maybe something that was covered in the webinar that you'd just like a little bit more information on?
We'll include Susan, you, and Rob in that category. If in your travels, if you're hearing questions from people you're talking to about what Wave4 is intended to produce or how it is operating, we'd love to hear those questions from you too.
Thanks, Andy. This is Susan. Hopefully you can hear me. It looks like my microphone is on. One of the questions that keeps coming up, actually there are two questions, and one of them is around the question of technical assistance and technical assistance providers to help schools or to help networks or districts doing this. I don't know what kind of advice you give when people are asking about technical assistance providers or how often that comes up, but that's a question we get asked often, and I just wanted to put it out there for the webinar.
It's a really interesting question. It's actually one of the things that was present at the creation of Wave4, because one of the things we're very much hoping comes out of this wave of investment is a much deeper level of participation among technical service providers who, they're in business to go where the market demand is. And right now, although there's some growing interest in demand for assistance on online and sort of blended learning projects, the marketplace isn't quite there yet in terms of a really strong, vital demand side to encourage a lot of these pretty high capacity providers to increase their capacity in those areas and really start wading into this end of the reform spectrum. So we're hoping that the partnership category that we've created here, but really across all the categories, that there will be a fair amount more of what you just described, that will get people with a really good school idea going to those partners, or some of those organizations deciding, we're already working with X district and they are on the cusp of making this kind of school a reality, and if we could help them set up that kind of a school that would be a sort of lighthouse within the district, that would be great for the district, great for the kids in that school, and great for our organization, because we'd be figuring out what giving that kind of support looks like. So that's the sort of field building that we're really hoping does come out of Wave4. So thank you for asking the question. It's a really important element in the program. There are a couple of really granular questions that we've been getting along the way too. Let's just do those because they're important. One of them is can I build a school at a single grade level at a time, or do I have to open an entire school with 400 students all at once? And the answer is yes, you can, and a number of the Wave 3A models are doing that. The distinction is that it has to actually be a new school. It can't be a project within a school. And so if you're doing a restart, for instance, you can have your 9th grade in a high school be the focused grade where you're making the big leap to a completely personalized blended learning approach. We don't expect schools to be able to do this across all 4 grade levels instantly all at once. But it can't just be a micro project within the larger school.
Andy, this is Susan again. I just encourage everybody who is participating to please feel free to type in your questions in the lower left-hand corner where it says chat. You can just type in there and hit return, and we'll address those questions. Andy, I know one of the things that was important around the design of Wave 3 and now Wave 4 is around this idea of anticipating the future of learning, that these personalized blended learning models are mastery-based or competency-based, but really are trying to follow. We know that the way kids learn is not linear, and though most of the traditional education environments are quite linear, that one of the things we're trying to push in this idea of breakthrough learning is to really pull all of the supports around the students. In the design of this, you've touched on this a bit, and you've also been really open to having discussions and answering people's questions as they emerge, because this field is so new for next generation learning challenges. But just that notion of anticipating the future of learning, are there ways in Wave 4 that you think are especially highlighting that?
Gosh, I mean, that's in some ways the biggest question of all, and I wish we had all 20 of our Wave 3A grantees on the phone. A number of them have said to us their own flavor of the same thing, which is we spent a lot of time and put a lot of energy into creating the most perfect school plan you could ever imagine, and then the kids showed up. And you know, what they're saying is, you know, they are architects and designers trying to map out what their notion of what, you know, a really great, really invigorating, personalized learning experience supported by technology with all the aspects that iNACOL, CCSSO, and NGLC have been talking about for years now. And then, you know, in the real world, things are messy, you know, and there are lots of ways that schools have to be incredibly agile to work successfully with the sorts of especially high challenge student populations that many of these schools are serving. So you're right, they are trying to sketch out and then live the future of education in 2 different ways. You know, they're trying to do it at a sort of an intellectual research supported way when they're drawing on everything else they see around them and on their own past professional experiences and coming up with an approach that they think is really going to work well. And then they're entering the incubator space, where they are all of them needing to remind all of their constituencies, from students to faculty members to parents to school board members, you know, that these are all experiments, and they are going to iterate on a daily basis, and almost all of them say that. And they say it with the, you know, the conviction of people with a dream, but with you know, realistic notions now about you know, what happens when you take your perfect plan and you try to make it live. And that's exactly what these grants are designed to help generate, and it's the kind of thing that you will all read if you go to blendmylearning.com, which is a blog space for about 40 different of these new blended school personalized learning pioneers. And you know, there's a lot of excitement and some occasional frustration expressed on those blog pages. But some really, really great information about how they're going about trying to address the challenges that our traditional model schools just clearly haven't been up to addressing effectively. Sarah, is there anything you want to add to that? And Susan, thank you for that question. It was a great one.
I think the most exciting thing that I'm hearing from people that are contacting me about potential ideas is that they're starting with the idea of how students learn and trying to build a system, design a system at the school level, you know, because it's tied to a community and a situated context. But design that around where the student is when they show up. So what Andy said about, you know, we had this great plan and then the kids showed up and their needs maybe dictated some new directions or additional directions. The folks that are calling me must be reading the blog, because they're saying, you know, we think we could take students at lots of different levels and build with that in mind and then design from there. And it's a lot more about enabling them to pursue things that interest them, ensuring they have wraparound support, whether that's a coach or a tutor or a dedicated person or persons, teams of people, and then sort of backfilling the demonstration of Common Core skills and content, backfilling grade level competencies, backfilling the typical requirements. And so that's a really different approach to learning, Susan, to your notion of next generation learning and the future of learning. So to start with the student and let their interests and passions drive them, enable those, and then backfill the requirements, the progress, how they're progressing, the demonstration of that for instance the state requires, and we all want to know is happening. And in the past I think we've designed you know, from that aspect and forced everybody to meet that in one way, obviously. So that's really exciting in terms of the kinds of questions that we're getting and the kinds of ideas that are being at a very high level pitched. And I think the additional fertile area here is the range of partnerships. So in this Wave 4, because of the third category in particular, and I'd say easily half the calls I'm getting are coming from the third provider partner category, is bringing in lots of folks and incenting collaboration that maybe people were already thinking about and somewhat motivated to do, but creating a sense of opportunity and urgency around partnering up aspects of a particular platform or service or technical assistance, any number of things in order to, say, extend the full hours that are available for learning in a school day or school year, provide a whole host of additional resource, whether that's community-based and virtually, globally based. It's just inviting a lot richer kind of notion of what's possible.
That's great. Thank you, Sarah. I'm in the process of typing in, as you hear, a really, really fast poll question. As you heard earlier, we're doing these planning grants for the first time. We know what the review process will be, but we're not entirely sure what the ratio is going to be of planning grant applications to school launch applications. So if you wouldn't mind, everyone who's on the phone, just type in whether you think right now you are considering doing a planning grant application or a launch grant application. And we're gathering data from lots of sources so we can calibrate our review process accordingly. That would be great. And while we're on it, I'm just going to do a minute's worth of nuts and bolts on our application process, and then Sarah, you can fill that out. I'm going to have to leave a little bit before the hour to get to another meeting here. We've had questions about the review process. The final decisions are made by the NGLC Executive Committee, which is composed of representatives from each of the founding organizations. Before that time, there are two review processes, an initial application round and a finalist round. We have challenge panels of about 20 experts from around the field who give their own recommendations on which ones to move forward to finalist status and so on. So it's a fairly rigorous process. Just a couple of notes. So we intentionally made the planning grant application a fairly light burden. You'll see that there are some questions on the website and then a couple of documents to submit. The launch grant application, which of course carries a lot more funding with it, is more complicated, and it involves the creation of a narrated PowerPoint deck. There are instructions in the RFP that describe exactly what we're looking for. We encourage everyone who is going to go for that grant to make sure that they embed their audio individually on each slide rather than saving this as a video, which forces the reviewers to sit through the entire thing and not be able to go back and forth from slide to slide. That's just one little technical detail that would make life easier for all the reviewers. Sarah, anything else you would add to that? And thank you for all this great response to the question. I'm seeing more planning than launch, which is interesting for us to see.
Yep, quite a few planning, which is probably consistent with the calls that I'm getting as well. I would just say, especially for the launch grant, make sure you speak to that you have appropriate authority to do the things that are proposed in your design. I know that we need to know that that condition has been met. And if you're applying for a planning grant, you're definitely going to want to talk to potential partners and the kinds of activities that you think are needed to move you closer to being able to apply for a launch grant, whether you do that initially for the April deadline or later down the road. And what's significant about, in both cases, what's significant about your vision for school that maybe is enabled by this particular design or these particular students that wouldn't be enabled otherwise. And if you are a known entity, so you already are operating as a brand, KIPP schools or Da Vinci, or in Ohio we have STEM schools. And so if you're a kind of a known entity out there, it would be good to speak to how what you're proposing is different and necessary in this new configuration, because our readers are all experts nationally, and if you don't say that explicitly, they may think of you as an after-school program or something when you're actually proposing a whole school design. Other questions?
All right, these have been really great points, and I want to thank Sarah and Andy, who are available, I know, through email and on the phone at EDUCAUSE in the coming weeks if you have other specific questions. But being able to walk through this grant opportunity in Wave 4 for Next Generation Learning Challenges, really exciting. These next-gen breakthrough school models are really starting to transform the way our students can learn. So again, Sarah and Andy, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your insights on the grants and being so open to all of us and to all of the interested education leaders out there for submitting. So thank you for your presentation today. This webinar is recorded and the slides will be available. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.